Procrastination is one of those thorny challenges facing any high achieving professional woman, no matter how efficient or effective you might be. In this podcast episode, I welcome a very special guest on a mission to support women to overcome one of the greatest challenges known to anyone attempting to be productive: procrastination. Today, we are welcoming an amazing guest. Dr. Christine Lee is a procrastination coach, clinical psychologist, and host of the Make Time for Success podcast. She helps people who are struggling with underperforming at work and at home to work smoothly and with high levels of productivity. In our conversation, we dive into her own journey to overcome procrastination, and she shares the secret that is at the heart of procrastination. Are you a high achieving woman who loves to procrastinate? This episode is for you. So excited to welcome Dr. Christine Lee to the show. Thank you so much for making time to be here. I'm so honored to have you as a guest on School of Self-Worth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nicole, for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation, and congratulations on your new podcast.
Thank you so much. Well, let me tell you all just a little bit about Dr. Christine Lee, and then we'll have her speak for herself. But she's a clinical psychologist, procrastination coach, and she's the host of the Make Time for Success podcast. And just to get us sort of into the conversation here, Christine, is I would love to, in the theme of self-worth, just start to play around, because I know that procrastination and self-worth feels to me like it has a pretty close tie. And I'd love to start to hear your thoughts about your own journey into, wherever you would like to start, actually, really, from self-worth to procrastination, which is a big range.
Well, thanks for that very interesting question. I'm going to have to think about this one. I can more easily start with the procrastination part of that question, because I've been talking about procrastination for a good 20 years in one way or another. I feel like I'm a natural born procrastinator because I have these natural tendencies to want to avoid things, want to overcomplicate things. And I think I'm also pretty good at denying that things actually exist. So it's a pretty rough mixture of tendencies when I am sometimes faced with challenging or new things that I have to complete. And that made my formal schooling years pretty complicated because I was constantly missing sleep. I was constantly missing deadlines. I was constantly missing out on more fun things because I never felt like I could actually attend fun things because I was always trying to catch up on something. So, a very, very long history of regular procrastination, but also quite severe procrastination. So I will leave it at that. And then I, through good fortune and maybe some fun circumstances, found my way into the career of psychology, of becoming a psychologist. But that had its own complications because I needed to speak about things like self-worth and feelings and vulnerability. And those were all things that I was very not prepared for from my upbringing for lots of different reasons, including the fact that I am the child of immigrants, and I am Chinese American. So there are cultural factors, family factors, all sorts of factors. But let's just say that I didn't really have an in-depth training in how to know myself and how to know my feelings, or how to communicate truthfully, openly, clearly, and directly. So I found myself in doctoral training for clinical psychology, being thrown into lots of different scenarios, including writing assignments, including having to write and complete very complicated psychological testing reports. So there are more than enough assignments. And I just really had to grow up as a human being. But I also had to find my way through this pattern of delay and distress and avoidance, because I wasn't doing myself or anyone else any favors by sticking to this pattern. And I will say that the lucky strike that I had was when I volunteered to put on a procrastination workshop at a major university. And I really had no business volunteering for this, but it ended up showing me that procrastination was not something that was inherent to me, really. It was not something that was permanent or part of my character. It was just a bunch of traits that I could actually recover from and alter. And so I think that was really a turning point for me in terms of both self worth and procrastination. And I've made a career and an expertise out of helping people to do the same for themselves, to really realize that procrastination is not a dead end street. It's not the end of the story. And it's certainly not your best coping mechanism.
Wow, Christine, thank you for sharing all of that. I was interested in so many pieces of it. First, when we were talking beforehand, so Christine and I know each other through a connected group of colleagues. And I was thinking about, you were sharing with me how at the beginning, when you first started going to therapy and how challenging that was, and you really just were sort of thrown right in there. And I'm curious, though, as you were speaking about this experience of learning to connect into feelings and then procrastination and throwing that workshop, if you could actually tie together for everyone the connection between your feelings and procrastination, or it might even be not feeling your feelings and procrastination.
What great questions. They are complicated. Let's just say that feelings are complicated. Let's start there. And if you are taught that rougher feelings like anger or jealousy or whatever you're feeling are ones not to be looked at or certainly not to be shared, then you're going to be closed off to a whole part of your experience that is actually very alive and very meaningful and there to inform you about what to do, what options to take, what options to close down. And I was also very lucky to find my way into the field of psychology because that is the field where we get to play with different identities, different ways of speaking, different parts of ourselves without feeling like we're in danger. So when one decides that, oh, I'm going to take on this procrastination habit of mine, what you end up facing is not really the work, although that will come. It's more your feelings about yourself, your identity, how you talk to yourself, how you see yourself, how you represent yourself, or how you fail to do that with other people. And it's a lot. It really is a lot. It took me many years of experimentation and messing up and having to tell people the truth and having to be in therapy and benefiting from therapy, of course, doing a lot of training, doing a lot of webinars, doing whatever I could to just learn just a little bit more about myself each time. And of course, working with patients is such a blessing in that way because you get to see into the human brain and into the human heart. What makes people tick? What makes people freak out? They tend to be very similar things that we're all so alike in such important ways. And then of course we're incredibly different. I don't want to ignore that, but I do think we're all incredibly alike. We're all inclined to be safe. I think there are people who like risk taking, but I think those people feel safe inside and they're chasing whatever they're chasing and being very high risk. I happen to not be very high risk, but I think there are just emotional parts of ourselves that are yearning to be known. And I think we see these parts when we develop symptoms, when we have preferences, when our intuition is telling us to pay attention, all sorts of things. When we fall in love, these are all emotional communications that we're having with ourself. And if we're procrastinating, it's likely we're tired, we're ignoring parts of ourselves that are really important and personal because we're thinking the world outside me is burning. I'm about to walk into a catastrophe. Who has time to pay attention to me? And that may actually be the beginning of all the trouble, that there was maybe a little bit less attention than maybe could have been paid to the developing self, to the feelings of the inner child, the inner self, the personal self. the private self. And then we all get into the school years and we feel, well, everything is about external performance. Nicole was kind enough to come onto my podcast and we talked a lot about that, about how we have to kind of teach ourselves away from that early training that everything needs to be known from the exterior, from the outside of ourselves, when so much is actually shown to us from the inside.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for articulating that complex topic. Because as you were speaking to, you were saying so much, it's like our identities are what are affecting our procrastination habits. And I am a recovering procrastinator myself as well. And journalism really trained me out of it. Like deadlines got me into action. And I feel like as you were speaking, I was like, oh, like I started to identify as somebody who could be really effective on deadline. And then I was, and all of a sudden I could get a lot done. So as you were speaking about that identity, I was curious then for you, like as a child, and especially being Chinese American, like where were you? What were you taught about that? What kind of identity was hampering you that was keeping you in that procrastination mode?
I think I, a lot of things, a lot of parts and pieces of my identity. I think I had a tendency towards just general lateness. So when you act like that as a child, you're going to get seen in a certain way by people. And it's same as when we're late as adults as well. So there were tags like irresponsible, things like that. And that stuff, I think we start to carry with us. And then we start to say, well, this new situation, well, if I'm starting as an irresponsible person, that's the baseline, that's what we have to work with. And I think when you recover from having identity or self thoughts that are along those lines, then you get to start with, I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm completely competent enough to handle this, or at least I trust that I will be. And it's a whole new beginning. It's a whole new person showing up for the challenge, even though we're in the same body. It's the same person. I'm the same person who used to be late all the time. I'm now only late occasionally, still late, but really transformed because I don't have to see myself as someone who's always late anymore like I used to.
I love what you're sharing about how really it's a shift in identity, which has to come from habits and ways you start to see each other, which I'm sure is like a whole, we could do an entire podcast probably just on that topic alone. And it's so interesting. What I'd love to actually hear from you, kind of, you touched on it a little bit, is your journey around self-worth. And I'm curious for you, you may not have tied it in together this way, but that tie between really being comfortable enough within yourself to start to change your identity of yourself. Like it's what you were referring to as safe and what I think of as self-worth. But if you could share a little bit more about that journey for yourself.
I will share that it was after the birth of my second child that I think it no longer was about self worth. It was almost like a survival situation where I had done a good bit of personal work through therapy, through my professional training. But then there was this whole world of motherhood that opened up. And I felt like I had to take care of everyone, not just myself, that it was more, I have to emerge. I have to straighten up all the errant parts that I really wasn't paying attention to because I hadn't had to, because I hadn't been a mother for that long. But I knew that with the addition of another child, I needed to really hone in, really develop things like authority. That is part of parenting, by the way. So it's not just recovering from procrastination. We need these skills to actually be competent adults, I think. So we need time management. We need priority management. We need to be able to say no when we really need to say no. We need to have appropriate boundaries with people when we feel like those years when you have little kids hanging around, that time is in short supply. And it's, I think, because I'm past those baby years now, I feel with each passing year, I value time even more. I think because I'm getting older really quickly, but also because I've been through what I've been through, training and procrastination and childbirth and parenting, that you start to really see that every second is a gift. Every second is so valuable. And that I wouldn't, at this point in my life, want to be throwing away these seconds and minutes and days thinking that I'm terrible, thinking that I'm irresponsible, thinking that I'm late, thinking that this is so critical, thinking that I'm such a big mess and there's no recovery from that, because that would be a really big waste of my time. And I want to say to our listeners listening today that no matter what your age is, I don't want you to waste your time attacking yourself. And I know Nicole feels the same because she's been on her own journey of healing and transformation. Really, this is the gift that we can give ourselves. And it's a gift that everybody can feel. Like you can feel so alive, so safe, so powerful all at the same time. But it does require release of your old habits. Nicole mentioned the word habits, and I've become pretty obsessed with the term and with teaching people how to do habits well so that you're not draining yourself of your energy anymore, but actually you're finding your energy again once you correct your habits.
Mm. That's so powerful. What you're saying, that you could feel powerful, safe. And there was one more word, and it was really great, but really around being in connection to yourself. And then I also loved what you were sharing about how it's a waste of time, really, to be hard on yourself. And I have never heard it framed up that way. And it really is so true. Like it's such a waste of energy because it doesn't take you anywhere except down. And then it doesn't really bring you anywhere positive or supportive or in action, even from there. And I'm curious in that particular way, like when we're hard on ourselves, do you have a habit that you like to teach or work with people around that? And
Yes, I do. And it was one of the best things I was taught while on internship. I was trying to think whether it was externship or internship. So, internship is what you do after your proper schooling for doctoral training. And I was on an inpatient eating disorders unit where the young women there were so frail and so medically compromised that the belief was that traditional psychotherapy practices would be not optimal because the bodies were focused on recovery and getting food from the starvation standpoint rather than doing deeper level exploration of feelings. And so I was taught cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the basic exercises of cognitive behavioral therapy is to argue for the other side. So be the lawyer of the other side. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm always late, I'm so irresponsible, how can anyone ever trust me? You want to then, in the same brain, in the same body that you have, argue for the other side. And you have to argue just as emphatically. So I would argue, well, there are times when I am on time. I'm really working on this behavior. And I know that in my heart of hearts, I care about my responsibilities, that I'm actually not an irresponsible person. And that's the real truth for me, too, that there is an option. I think when we are so extreme with our negative views on ourselves, it's a way of our protecting ourselves from harm, from doing something wrong, but it really is too extreme. And there's so many thoughts that we can have that are more flexible, that are more forgiving, that are more reasonable, and that are more aligned with the true reality of who we are and what we're capable of. Those extreme thoughts really keep us in an underperforming space. So they are a waste of time because we have to recover from those thoughts and feelings before we can even start our work. We have this whole train of thinking, and then we have to recover from that before we can get our active mind, our problem solving mind in action. And I just say to everyone now, just cut that entire experience out. And I can be really like, let's take the cleaver to that experience. And some people can do that, and some people just don't believe it's possible. But that's the work of coaching, that we will do this patiently. We will do this with techniques that help you individually, you as a person, you the unique person that has the unique coping mechanisms and defenses. It's okay, we have time, but we just don't want to use it procrastinating.
Well, I love it. Be the lawyer for the other side. I was just like, give the evidence and go full on, is what I was hearing when you said that. And it's like, yes, argue for the other side because there's proof both ways.
Yes.
There's always proof both ways. And it's which proof are you choosing to focus on?
Yes. I want to share with you, just before we were recording, I was on TikTok, I think, and I saw someone say in her car that she was reading a book, and the book was teaching her that it takes just as much energy to love yourself as it does to hate yourself. And I immediately thought to myself, based on what I know, it takes much more energy to hate yourself, because I do think when you treat yourself with love, as this woman on screen was trying to encourage people to do, you bring back your energy. You start to restore your energy and peace inside. And so you have that much more energy left over. And like I said just a couple minutes ago, hating yourself is such an energy drain. It wastes your time. And then you have to recover from it, like you would recover from an illness that came over you. And you know how that is. If recovering from jet lag or illness, it's a bummer because you're not your full self and you're not able to do what you know you're capable of doing.
Well, your body has to put so much energy into healing you
Yes.
before you can then actually, whereas loving yourself is easy, like, oh, I can just be in it. And I will say that because I know I said loving yourself is so easy, but it can also be from actions of love, right?
Yes.
Versus just being like, I love myself. I always think of that. That's kind of hard for some people, but just doing actions to show yourself love.
Yes. Yes. I will share that when people first come to see me, oftentimes they're so exhausted and so depleted from trying or from worrying about not trying that I tell them the first thing to do is actually not to do their work, which they're expecting me to say.
Mm.
But I tell them to do something that's really very unrelated to the work. So something fun, something in conjunction with somebody else that's social, because oftentimes people who are procrastinating are also denying themselves the fun and the socializing. And it's just a little bit of a restoration project of saying, you know what, you're allowed to have your life back. You're allowed to have all the different elements, your health, your social life, your financial life, your productivity, all of it is allowed and you can handle it. You can actually be the captain of that ship.
I love that. I am also always coaching my folks into having fun because it is something that we sometimes really forget. The whole point of this life is ultimately to enjoy it. It's not to be like, this is terrible and hard and miserable, but like, no, to actually enjoy it. So I love what you're sharing about that. And that procrastination really is, again, a surface thing that's showing us something much deeper.
Yes. And I will add that procrastination is one of the most unfun things you can do for yourself. So you know it is not the path of choice. You know there are other paths out there that there's so much excitement and easier ways through than tearing yourself apart and worrying and not facing the thing you really want to face.
Such a profound statement. Well, in the theme of self worth, Christine, I'm curious, what is your favorite thing about yourself?
My favorite thing about myself might be that I really like to try things. So I love learning. I think people say that a lot. I like experiencing new perspectives, new opportunities, new chances, coincidences. I just like exploring, I will say. And I like exploring the psyche, but I also like exploring how people do things. And I like exploring things like hobbies just personally. So things that are new, I think really light me up because it makes me think, how does that fit into the whole grand scheme of things? How can I make this fit into my own life? Or does it fit in? Because nowadays I don't want to fit everything in to my life anymore. And I think that has helped. So another thing that I like about myself newly is that I enjoy calm in my heart because that really wasn't an experience that I had growing up and into my 30s, I will say. And now I really have that most days, this kind of lingering and constant sense that everything is actually okay and that I don't have to freak out. It's a really lovely thing.
That sounds like the dream, I feel like, for many of our listeners, to have that peace in your heart and not be freaking out over
Yes.
every little thing.
Yes.
And I'm curious, when do you feel like, could you share a little bit the last time you felt challenged in your self worth and how you moved through it? Because what I find for most women is that it is a perpetual journey. Like as soon as we move through one, we're often confronted with another. And if there's a recent example you might be able to share.
Well, Nicole, you and I are both entrepreneurs as well as coaches. And I think the entrepreneur life is just one test after another of how we can withstand fragilities in our sense of being worthy, I think, because each launch, each product launch, or each offer, or each podcast episode, even can be a gauge of how we're feeling about ourselves if we let it represent that. And I think in part it always does because we are doing these events and these offers and these launches as ourselves. So I don't think we can really fully avoid that. But the effort to say, I'm going to not let it bring me down, I'm not going to bring myself down, is a real win. And I think no matter what the numbers are at the end of every launch or at the end of any project, if we're feeling like we've taken care of ourselves in the middle, that's a real win. So I've had to learn that the hard way because I like to launch a lot, because I like to experiment with things. And I've seen my emotions go up and down, but I also have seen myself over time get really stronger about who I am, what I represent, what I'm here to do in life and in my career. And I think that's just been, again, a really valuable thing to do. So I don't regret a minute of it. Has it been easy? No, it has not been easy, but I'm glad and feel very grateful that I'm able to enjoy entrepreneurship and do the work that I feel I was meant to do too.
Well, you shared that very eloquently. I feel like entrepreneurship is one long personal development journey
Yes.
every single day. Yeah. Well, Christine, are you ready for a little lightning round of fun questions?
Yes,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, awesome. In the spirit of fun, which we've been speaking about. So here's the first one. What was the last thing you watched on TV?
Oh, wow. I don't watch much TV. I will say that is a great procrastination tip. I think that really helped me to get chunks of time back because I would mindlessly watch. And I would also
Mm.
mindlessly do a lot of other things like roam the malls or do errands, and errands that I find I no longer need. It's funny, I thought they were critical before, but really I think we can cut a lot of things out. So the last thing I watched was the Grammys last night, and I really had a great time because they did a really wonderful job of it this time. And I saw a lot of my favorite performers each win a single statuette, which I thought was really lovely. I guess the Emmys isn't a statuette, but it was nice to see people supporting each other. It made me think about music and incorporating music into my business more because music really is a healing and enlivening avenue that we have, which I don't really use as much as I should in my business. So that's what I last watched.
We got her show and a tip. So good. Okay. So, Christine, what's on your nightstand?
Oh, my nightstand has a pile of books that are only partially read, including the book The Power of Now, which I think is has been interesting so far. It's a book that I've started and stopped a couple of times. I have an Alexa and I listen to music. I do listen to music every morning or a part of every day. And some crystals, two crystals. One's an amethyst and the other one is blue, and it's light blue. It's selenite. I think that's how you pronounce it. They're not there for any particular reason. I just like them. So I like to have things that I like around me. There's a tchotchke from my wedding there too, a heart-shaped box, which is really kind of funky. So it's a little bit of a cluttered space, but it is me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. And you said you like new things. So this question is perfect for you. When was the last time you tried something new and what was it?
I will have to think about this. I think it might have been a while since I've tried something new. I will have to think. Oh, all I had to do was look to my left. I can share with you on video, for those of you who are watching the video, a 5-year journal. So it happened to be New Year's this year that I was in this cute drugstore in a neighboring town. And I saw this book and I thought to give it to someone else. But then I thought maybe that person wouldn't like this gift. And I thought, let me try this idea for myself. So this book has 5 years of calendar dates, and you can see with each year what you wrote the year before. And I think it's really sweet. I've been hearing a lot about the power of journaling. Never thought of myself as a journaler. So I thought I could do 2 sentences a day and try to keep up with this. And miraculously, I have been keeping up with it so far. So that is my new recent experiment. And it's the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, that's a very impressive commitment, a 5-year journal, because
Yeah.
mine are like 3 months at a time. Okay, perfect. Okay, last question. What are your top 3 most used emojis?
Oh, I definitely have the big fat red heart emoji pretty much every day. I The one with the teeth looking really stressed. My favorite looking one. That's definitely a favorite one. And then I tend to use the fire one because if I'm writing emails to my list, I'm talking about a lot of hot things. So I like to use the hot fire one too. I'm
Love it.
curious, what are yours? Now that you asked that,
Oh, now you want me? I'm like, what? I'm like, I use so many. I feel like they're constantly rotating. But the purple heart, because I'm a BTS fan, so
okay.
K-pop. So I'm always like, purple heart is for sure in the top. I use the laughing emoji a lot. I try to use the sideways one to not age myself with like
Okay.
Gen Z, because I know they don't really use the laughing emoji that much, but I like to use the laughing emoji.
Okay.
And what would be my last one? Um, I use also the fire or like the boom one, like the spark,
Yeah.
because I feel the same way. I'm like, there's just like lots of exciting, fun things to happen. And I always want to bring the sense of like play and fun for people. So, like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, either the fire or the spark is happening a lot in my messages and in my
Yes.
texts and stuff.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, Christine, where can people reach you if they want to find out more or want to work with you or hear more from you?
Yes, thank you. I love my podcast, so please visit me over there and grab a listen or two. It's the Make Time for Success podcast. Nicole will be on in May, and I have a bunch of wonderful guests on the show. It's now at the start of the 3rd year of the podcast, so there are more than enough episodes to do your decluttering with or to do your daily commute with. I invite you to listen and appreciate you giving me a follow there. And then I'm also on social media quite a bit as Procrastination Coach, and my website is Procrastination Coach as well. I have a list of free resources for people that I can share with you, Nicole, and your audience. And all you would need to do is go to procrastinationcoach.com/start. And the reason I said start is because these are resources that will just help you get started if you've been procrastinating. So to help you get a little bit more organized, to get your plans a little bit more in order, it's those kinds of resources, and they're all free. So again, it's procrastinationcoach.com/start.
Well, you do not want to miss out on the opportunity to hang out more with Dr. Christine Lee, because she is so fun and such a beautiful host. I had such a great time on her podcast as well. So make sure you check out all of those things. We're listing them in the show notes as well to make it easy for you to access. And I want to say thank you so much to you, Christine, for being here. It's been just an honor. And I love the kismet of our connection, and being able to be on each other's podcasts is just really a gift. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Nicole. You're amazing. Hugs to you. Good luck to you going forward. You're going to rock this podcast.
Thank you so much.